But first, the already contentious Conservative leadership race just got way more contentious. Patrick Brown is disqualified from running to lead the Tories. The party says his campaign broke campaign finance rules by allowing a corporation to pay for work done on the campaign's behalf. Tonight, Patrick Brown is here to respond to that serious allegation. Then, party president Rob Batherson will react live. And longtime Conservative strategist Corey Teneycke and the RIT.ca's Eric Grenier are standing by. They'll be listening in and break the back and forth down for us all. Let's start, though, with Patrick Brown, disqualified leadership candidate. Hi, Mr. Brown. Good to see you. Thanks for making the time.
My pleasure.
Mr. Brown, did a corporation pay somebody to do work on behalf of your campaign, and did you know about it?
We have no knowledge of this, and all we've heard from the party was there was an anonymous allegation that someone was working on our campaign but being paid by a corporation. We had 1,800 volunteers in our campaign around the country, and if there was anyone that was working on our campaign during work hours, we would certainly have addressed it. But how do you respond to a phantom? And so let's call this what it was. The party establishment was nervous that Pierre Poilievre wasn't going to win. And his supporters, Pierre Poilievre's supporters, are the ones behind this disqualification because they know we brought in 150,000 very motivated new Conservatives from diverse communities that wanted to take the party in a different version, a different path than his version of extreme conservatism.
Okay, let's parse out a couple of things that you said there. First of all, this idea that it's a phantom accusation. I've spoken to members of the party who were involved in this decision. They say that they have the receipts, that, for example, this is not just based on verbal accusations. They also say that they communicated to your campaign these concerns first last week on Wednesday and then through a formal letter, which was required under the rules on Thursday, and that your campaign actually responded Friday, and you were given a number of days before the meeting that occurred last night to respond in a more full way. Your response to that?
So they asked a number of bizarre questions about different cultural membership sellers. We responded to every question they had, and their final question was more recently on this issue, if there was someone being paid by a corporation. And we responded by saying, tell us the name of the person, tell us the name of the company, and we would research it because we had no idea what they were talking about. And so it's impossible to respond to an allegation with no details. And really it speaks to the fact that this was a very flimsy allegation put together by the Poilievre campaign to disqualify an adversary they were very worried about. And Vashi, they were running TV ads recently, the last few weeks, in the Toronto area, a very expensive media market, running TV ads against my campaign. They were very clearly worried. We felt with the number that I signed up, the number that Jean Charest signed up, the number of new memberships that Dr. Leslie Lewis signed up, that Pierre's path to victory was very tenuous. And clearly, when they resort to actions like this, it speaks to the fact that they were worried.
Okay, I do, Mr. Brown, have to challenge you on the conclusive nature with which you're saying this is Pierre Poilievre's doing. Do you have any proof that it is his campaign that brought this to the party's attention? Because both the party and his campaign say they didn't, that it was a third party. Do you have proof otherwise?
So, first of all, it was Pierre Poilievre's supporters on Leoc who are the ones advocating for this. On top of that, members of Pierre's campaign had even communicated to my campaign chair, John Reynolds, that they were going to be successful in pursuing this. And so very clearly, Pierre's campaign was behind this. And it's unfortunate because there's now over 150,000 members who I signed up, many who joined the Conservative Party for the first time, who are now being disenfranchised, that they paid their $15 thinking they'd have a vote where they could take the Conservative Party on a different path. And the positions I took in this leadership campaign were different than what some Conservatives were accustomed to. I said very clearly, it doesn't matter who you love, where you're born, the color of your skin, what God you worship, we were going to fight for everyone. I said that I would attend pride parades, I would challenge Islamophobia, I would oppose Bill 21 relentlessly. I took positions that the party hadn't taken before, and I think it made some uncomfortable.
And I understand all of that, and certainly we've covered it extensively on the show. But again, circling back to my original question, you are very specifically saying that the Leadership Organizing Committee of your party has been infiltrated, dominated, skewed by Pierre Poilievre supporters, and that Pierre Poilievre's campaign is behind your disqualification. You have yet to provide proof. You're saying a few people from his campaign called your campaign and said something to that effect. That is not proof.
So, Vashi, it was a very heated discussion last night at Leoc. It was a split decision, and those who were pushing this were the ones who have had a history over the last number of months of advocating Pierre's positions on Leoc. This is unheard of. The fact that you have a leading contender for a national political party leadership disqualified mere days before the ballots were sent out is wrong. It's an egregious abuse of our democracy. And we know very clearly who was behind it, who benefits from this. The one person who benefits from this is Pierre Poilievre. Actually, it's his supporters who are the people that have advocated for every request he's had before, from an earlier leadership vote to not having me approved as a candidate. The people that are his biggest advocates who are the ones pushing for this. And he's the one celebrating today. But I would go further, Vashi. The person who should really be celebrating is Justin Trudeau. Because if Justin Trudeau gets to face a Conservative Party led by Pierre Poilievre, who wants to ban childhood vaccines for polio and smallpox, or run on monetary policy that you can opt out of inflation through cryptocurrency, or associate with individuals like Pat King, Justin Trudeau is going to have the easiest election of his lifetime. And that's why I think the person who really gets to celebrate today is Justin Trudeau.
Look, again, I feel like a lot of that we have covered extensively, but the allegation that's being made here very specifically, the idea that your party breached campaign finance rules, are you sure, or your campaign rather, breached those rules? Are you sure your campaign didn't?
Yeah, we have no knowledge of this allegation. Listen, we had 1,800 volunteers working around the country, and we told the party we had no idea who this anonymous allegation was, and if anyone was working on our campaign during work hours on behalf of a company, we would immediately address that. We've been very clear that we want every rule to be followed with the Canadian Elections Act, with the party's election rules, but really we were put in a position that we had to respond to a phantom allegation with no names, no details, and that's impossible to do.
I want to ask you more broadly about the nature of the allegation. Okay, I take your point that you don't have specifics on it. The party contends differently. I'm reading right now a statement from 5 councillors, a majority group of Brampton councillors, they're saying, initiated forensic investigations into allegations of financial irregularities, nepotism, and possible backroom contract irregularities under Patrick Brown's, they're saying, failed leadership. They're pointing to a number of things that they want to investigate about you. I'm thinking about Canadians who are watching the progression of your campaign, who are listening to all this, who hear you say, it's not me, it's them. It's not me, it's them, over and over again. And I wonder if they can be totally convinced, given the questions about that these councillors are raising, including, a couple deputy mayors, given the fact that the Conservative Party took this, yes, extraordinary step, but did take the step and contends they have more than verbal accusations. Can you understand how Canadians watching tonight would have some questions about the ethics of the campaigns you run?
So, first of all, I should say, I don't think it's a big surprise that there are 2 different blocks on city councils. I think in most cities there is different positions and councillors that have different perspectives. In this case, there is 5 councillors who have taken one position over the last number of years and 5 councillors who have taken another position. The block of 5 councillors that you spoke about, they made allegations. It was investigated by Deloitte. I supported the investigation, and Deloitte found there was no wrongdoings at all. These were allegations against our previous CEO, and I'm glad that it was investigated. I'm glad that the complaints were dismissed. But their involvement right now is clearly at the behest of Pierre Poilievre's campaign, who have been trying to create disruption in Brampton, just like they're doing right now through running very expensive TV ads every day in the Greater Toronto Area media market.
I guess what I wonder is, can you understand how saying this is all Pierre Poilievre's fault, this is all his doing, might fall a little bit flat when you do see the other parties who are concerned about your leadership and the ethics of that leadership?
In politics, there's going to be two sides, and whether it's a municipal election, a provincial election, a federal election, there's going to be different perspectives, and they will be fiercely fought campaigns. But at the end of the day, what happened last night was wrong. To disqualify a leading contender for the leadership a mere days before ballots are being sent out has never happened before. It's disenfranchised 150,000 Canadians, and it's done on an anonymous complaint. And so, no matter how Pierre's campaign or the party establishment spins this, what happened was wrong.
But are you really contending, just final question, are you really contending the party that you wanted to leave is completely corrupt? Like, do you see what a serious allegation that is, and do you really believe it?
I believe that Pierre's campaign successfully lobbied enough members of LEOC to get what they wanted, and they didn't want an election. They wanted a coronation, and this is not new behavior for the tactics of the Poilievre campaign. They have bullied MPs. My campaign co-chair, Michelle Rempel, got threatened to be thrown out of caucus for calling out Pierre's campaign for their association with a convoy. Ed Fast, one of the leading members of Jean Charest's campaign, got booted as finance critic by the Poilievre supporters in caucus. He is using his majority in caucus to bully. So this is not a new tactic, and unfortunately he was successful last night. And I say unfortunate because the Conservative Party membership deserves to have an election. Let the members decide. It shouldn't be a few people late at night robbing members of their democratic right.
Unless they really believe, unless that party really believes that you have broken the law.
Well, clearly it was a split decision last night on LEOC, and it was very clearly the agenda of the Poilievre supporters. And if they have any allegations, any name, I'd love to see it. But right now, all we're dealing with is a phantom allegation. And, I would have no tolerance for anyone that breached the law. If there's anyone that wasn't abiding by campaign finance laws, I would immediately demand that it's addressed. But all we're dealing with right now is an anonymous complaint with no name and no information.
Okay, Mr. Brown, I have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
That was Patrick Brown. Rob Batherson is the president of the Conservative Party. He's been listening in from Halifax and joins us now. Hi, Mr. Batherson. Good to see you. Thanks for making the time.
Hi, Vashi.
I'll pick up where Mr. Brown left off. Did LEOC, did the party provide the substance of these allegations, including names, including dates, to Mr. Brown and his campaign?
Well, first, Vashi, it's a sad day. We're a dedicated group of volunteer Conservatives on the Leadership Election Organizing Committee from coast to coast to coast. Nobody joins LEOC to disqualify a leadership candidate. But we had serious information, serious allegations that dealt with violating the Canada Elections Act. And Mr. Brown's campaign was provided ample opportunity to respond. They provided a written response, and the response was wanting. And over the last several days leading up to last night's Leadership Election Organizing Committee meeting, our committee chair, our legal counsel attempted, with senior members of Mr. Brown's campaign, with Mr. Brown's legal counsel, to find a path where that campaign could come into compliance. And unfortunately, that didn't take place. That's a question that really Mr. Brown and his campaign team will have to answer. What we're trying to do is do the right thing, regardless of the candidate, and we apply the same rules equally to all six candidates.
Right. But
that's why we had to refer the information to Elections Canada so that they can initiate their powers to investigate and determine what actually happened.
I do understand that, but respectfully, the question was whether or not Mr. Brown was afforded due process. I take your point that a letter was sent, a letter was received. I put that to Mr. Brown, but what he is contending is that the nature of the allegations, the specifics that could have enabled him to act on them, were not provided to him. Can you say unequivocally that those specifics were?
What I can say is Mr. Brown was given a great degree of information. Mr. Brown was afforded an opportunity to meet with the chair of the Leadership Election Organizing Committee, with the party's legal counsel. He declined. Again, these are questions that Mr. Brown will have to answer, keeping in mind that we also have to afford due process when a whistleblower comes forward with information. They have certain rights that we have to follow. And now ultimately it's going to be up to Elections Canada to investigate. There's a lot of material, Vashi, a lot of material, and we're handing that over to Elections Canada, and they will take it from this point.
And that complaint or that information, the whistleblower that you're speaking of, you heard very clearly Mr. Brown allege that it is someone associated or within the Poilievre campaign. Can you tell us more information about who brought this information to your party's attention?
There's no evidence that any of the individuals that brought forward information are affiliated with any leadership campaign besides Mr. Brown's own campaign. And again, that's why we're handing it over now to Elections Canada, so that they can make a determination as to what should be done vis-a-vis the Canada Elections Act. And we had a decision to make at LEOC. Do we refer all these troubling allegations to Elections Canada and leave that cloud hanging over Mr. Brown? Or did we make the difficult yet necessary decision to disqualify a candidate? And again, nobody enters this thinking, we want to do this, but we afforded Mr. Brown, we gave Mr. Brown's campaign the better part of a week to attempt to get their affairs in order. And unfortunately, their response fell short.
I mean, to be fair, though, and I take all that into account, I'm thinking about, in the same way I told Mr. Brown, Canadians watching tonight, you gave him the better part of a week. You sent him a letter Thursday. His campaign responded Friday. He basically had the weekend. I mean, was there not some sort of middle ground? Did it have to go straight to disqualification? We're at a pretty late stage of this race. There are only 6 candidates. This is a big deal. You have disqualified someone from running to be the leader of your party at this stage in the game. Was there any wiggle room there? It just seems so drastic.
Unfortunately, when you're faced with trying to do the right thing, the notion of trying to sweep this away, cover it up, pretend that it's not serious, when it is very serious. The Canada Elections Act and ensuring that our candidates follow the law is extremely serious. And ultimately, LEOC felt that the responsible thing to do was refer the evidence and the information to Elections Canada, and based on the unsatisfactory responses of Mr. Brown's campaign, to make the very difficult decision of disqualifying. Nobody wanted to be there, and I think there was a lot of good faith effort on behalf of the Leadership Election Organizing Committee through our chair Ian Brody to find a better path than being forced to be disqualified. And Mr. Brown's campaign was well aware that this option was going forward. They were aware of the meeting last night. Nobody should be caught off guard that was the option.
Was it a split decision? Sorry for interrupting. I apologize. I'm just running out of time. Was it a split decision last night, as Mr. Brown referenced?
Well, it was a more decisive decision than Mr. Brown's own margin of victory when he won the Ontario PC Party leadership. So it wasn't unanimous, but what was unanimous is every LEOC member felt these allegations were serious enough to be referred to Elections Canada for investigation. So
were there two sort of votes or two sorts of decisions taken? I just want to be clear for our viewers. When you say it wasn't unanimous, was it, as has been reported by other outlets, 11-6 in favor of disqualifying Mr. Brown? And then was there a separate vote on whether or not to send the matter to Elections Canada?
There was one vote on disqualification, and in the discussion around that vote. And again, I listened to Mr. Brown's interview. I understand he's hurt. I like Mr. Brown. I've known him for over 20 years. I'd have a beer or a coffee with him, depending on who's up to the table. But we have to set aside personal opinions to make the right decision. And last night's debate and discussion on this was very respectful, wasn't heated. People were respectful in terms of disagreements as to whether these serious allegations warranted disqualification. And then we had a vote, and there was a clear vote to disqualify Mr. Brown. But even those that didn't vote in favor of disqualification, they all said they wanted this investigated by Elections Canada, and they all recognized that these were serious, serious allegations of violating federal law.
I just have a few seconds left, but doesn't that split vote underscore a little bit of what Patrick Brown is saying, that the fact that it wasn't unanimous is that it maybe wasn't the right decision to make at that time, at this point in time in the leadership?
No, because we're faced with serious allegations of breaking the law, serious allegations of not following our own rules as a party. To brush that aside, and I do want to respectfully challenge, Mr. Brown's national campaign co-chair, Michelle Rempel-Garner, she brought forward an email in May about a party member who engaged in horrible, racist commentary and declared himself a supporter of Mr. Poilievre. Our party acted immediately on that. So we deal with allegations regardless of the source, regardless of who they are targeting, and we prosecute those allegations seriously and fairly. And I have a message for those who joined the campaign in support of Mr. Brown. You have a home and a place in this party. I know you must be hurting with your candidate having been disqualified because of these serious allegations, but stay involved, cast a vote. The Conservative Party has a home for you.
Okay, I have to leave it there. Mr. Batherson, thanks very much for making the time this evening.
Thanks, Vashi.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.